Hello, welcome back to Ideas at Work at Beyond and our conversation with the candidates. When we took our break, Scott wanted to make a final point about the educational cost sharing money.
Actually, I thought I was speaking when you took the break, but go ahead.
All right.
Two things. If the money, and again, it can be argued by both sides, the education side and the tax side for people, but if that $595,000 was meant to be used for tax relief for the town of Ridgefield, then that should have been used for that purpose. Having said that, as an education person, if that money is going to be given to us in any form, why not let the education people, like I said, use that money that they think is best for the education system, and then hold them fiscally responsible for when they come for their budget the next year. And just make it clear to them, if this is what you really think you need, here it is. But next year, this becomes part of your budget, and it can't be another $5 million increase.
But Scott, you have to keep in mind the mill rate and the impact on that mill rate. And it's easy to say that you have to pay attention to the taxpayers and what we're passing on. But when you pass on a 6, 7, 8% mill rate increase, that's a huge increase. There's a lot of people that can't afford that. Our 10-year pro forma showed us, once we got through the bundle, to begin bringing that mill rate down so we could be in the 2, 3, 4% area. That's where our target needs to be. That was the purpose of our meeting this morning, to begin talking about a target and discussing it with school representatives. It is more a question of, and I think you will agree with this, that Board of Education budgets to programs. You do not sit down in your budget cycle and say, what are we going to be able to do this year? Do we think we should come in at 13%, 4%, 8%? What is a good number for us to come in at? What does the budget look like? What is the impact on the mill rate? What you do is you look at our educational system today and what do we need to do to improve it, which is good. That's very, very good, but I think more attention needs to be paid to the cost of those improvements and the impact on the mill rate. Yeah. And that's what we need to get out up front of the budget process and begin discussing, because if you're going to be developing programs that are going to result in an impact that is going to be a $6, $7 million increase, an increase of 8, 9, 10, we've had increases put forth of 13% in education. That is huge, because our budget, and if you look at the growth of our budget over the last 5 years, it has been almost exponential. It is incredible.
Doubled in 10.
Well,
yes.
Taxes have doubled in 10.
What's that mean?
Well, I'm saying you're complaining about the growth of the budget.
No. I'm talking about education.
Okay.
I'm talking about education, Mac. And that we need to begin taking a look at, when we're looking at education, I don't have a problem with improving the schools. The school systems, and I've said this many, many times, they're the engine that drives our economy. The schools are what protect our property values. The schools are what is providing the equity in our homes, and in my case, what allowed me to send my daughter to college, because I was able to borrow on that equity. We need to protect that, and a good educational system is critical to that. But at the same time, it's got to be a balance. And we need to be sure that as time goes on, that every dollar we get is being spent efficiently. If we know we're getting money back on special ed, do we budget that? Should we take that into consideration? Should we budget a percentage of that to play it safe? You spoke earlier about planning for the future. Do we want the Board of Education to sit down and let's start talking about the ECS next year, because there's a number in there, but we still aren't going to get any definite agreement on that until the legislative session ends, which is going to be after our budget cycle, so we can look forward to having the same predicament next year.
Okay, we have another call. Let's see what the caller says. Hello, you have a question?
Yes, I do. This is a question for Scott Mason.
Okay.
Scott, you spoke about needed school programs that have been cut in light of keeping the town budget in line. Mr. Marconi has held the line on the budget and kept the rate of increase down each year. So how do you maintain the balance of the budget and while getting the programs you want at the same time, and being fiscally responsible to the taxpayers of Ridgefield?
Okay, thank you.
I think you misunderstood me a little bit. What I said to the ECS grant money is that if you're going to give it to the Board of Education and let them spend it, then you should let the education people decide how they're going to spend it. That was my point. And where the spending was kept down last year was 2.85%.
2.64.
2.64, I'm sorry. That was last year. And we had years before that with the budget. You know, last 10 years, taxes for a lot of people have doubled. Granted, the school budget is 70% of that, 75% of that. And you need to be very careful of how we do that and how we spend money. Can it go up $5 million every year? It can't go up $5 million every year. None of us are going to be living in the houses we're in now. But if you're going to give the education people money to spend with that grant, let them decide how they're going to spend it and hold them responsible the following year. Make sure you know, and I'm glad we're finally having talks in September and October and going forward, and say, now remember, last year you wanted this, this, and this. Next year, that becomes part of your main budget. Don't say you have to increase your budget because of those things from the last year. You have to include those and reduce something else.
Would you accept that as a Board of Education member?
I would, because Rudy, I'm being allowed to spend the money that the educational people who we hire and pay a lot of money.
Hartford was giving that to the town to hold down the mill rate.
Correct.
And it went through the general fund. It did not go directly to education, which was a debate, I believe, in Hartford, what the flow of the
Both
dollars
sides of that
would
debate
be.
were in Hartford. The governor
Right,
was
absolutely.
advocating better education, and the legislature was saying tax relief. And
Right, right.
Okay, I want to
Move on.
move to a different subject, the deer hunt. This is very emotional for a lot of people. Last year, the town had a deer hunt on Hemlock Hills, and about 25 deer were taken over the course of the hunt. And this year, the Conservation Commission has backed, and the Board of Selectmen has approved a plan to expand that to 4 parcels. Hemlock Hills again, Levy Park, Spectacle Swamp, and the Turtle Court land near the golf course.
Canterbury Lane, at the end of Canterbury.
Up at the high school, right?
No, by the golf course.
Now,
Golf course
Rudy,
person.
you were part of a 3-2 majority on the Selectmen that supported expanding the deer hunt to the 4 parcels.
Yes.
What's the logic of it?
The logic of it is, when we first began this debate, the debate was brought to us really by Lyme disease. We have one of the highest rates of Lyme disease in the state of Connecticut. Lyme disease is not caused by a deer, but the deer is the major vehicle that transports the ticks to various locations around our yards and the woods, and etc. In addition to Lyme disease, our flora and fauna in our open space is being decimated. If you look at our open space and then go to another part of New England, is when you see the contrast, and it is incredible, especially according to Dr. Ben Oko, who is chair of the Conservation Commission. Additionally, we have one of the highest rates of deer auto accidents in the state of Connecticut. Now, one of the questions is it just because Chief Leegee, in doing his very meticulous job, is reporting all of them to the state and others aren't? Because what I found out is that you help keep your insurance rates down as dictated by the ISO if you don't report them. There's some suspect there, suspicion about those statistics with respect to the deer auto accident. And finally, the amount of shrubbery and landscaping that's being destroyed around each residential home. Most importantly, Lyme disease, most importantly, our open space. We had a town meeting. We debated it, brought it to a town meeting, and it was a town...
Wasn't there?
Excuse me?
Wasn't there a referendum? Or was it
No,
just a vote after
it
the
was a
meeting?
town meeting.
But there was a vote.
And we held the town meeting at Veterans Park School.
Yeah.
And we were anticipating, well, we originally were in the lower conference room figuring maybe we'd have 100 to 150 people, and we thought, gee, maybe we better move it over to VP. It has a capacity of 300 people. So we did. And as the meeting was waiting to start and people were coming in, we soon filled the auditorium. I took a walk outside and realized that the line still went across Governor Street down into the Balducci's parking lot, and that we were going to have a capacity problem. Make a long story short, we completed the town meeting. Everyone had an opportunity to vote, and we had over 600 people, one of the largest town meetings this town has ever experienced. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor of do something. you need to control the number of deer. The counts are thought to be in the 50 to 60 deer per acre count. The DEP recommends around the 20, 25, 15, somewhere in there. Taking 25 deer in the Richfield open space is nothing, Am I a hunter? No. Could I ever pull a trigger on a deer? Absolutely not. Could I shoot an arrow on a deer? Absolutely not. However, the controversy this year and the reason for the 3-2 vote had less to do with the fact whether we should hunt or not hunt, although one member, Ms. Manners, will always be opposed to hunting, period. Ms. Masters felt that she was opposed to this year's hunt because it included bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And
more
that's
painful
what
for the deer,
upset her.
yeah.
However, we
Well-
were reassured by the committee, and they were commended last year for doing an absolutely wonderful job in providing safety to the surrounding area. They assured us that the same safety precautions would be taken this year, and safety would be a #1 priority, and I have no reason to expect that they wouldn't do that.
Scott, where are you on the deer hunting issue?
I'm in Rudy's boat on this for the same reasons. The Lyme disease, the car accidents, the transmitting, the deer per acre. I was in on both those meetings. I was sitting in the back on both those. Mr. Below, Mr. Zandri, and other people that you appointed to be there, they were commended, like Rudy said, on the safety and the job and the way in which they did their job. I did not hear anything. The Conservation Commission backed this. I did not hear anything from anybody saying that they were going to lax their restrictions on how they handled safety. Matter of fact, I heard the opposite. I heard we're going to double check and recheck how we do things, not close to houses and roads. It's something that we need to do in this town. It's something that the townspeople, here I am saying we need to open up things to the town and listen to the townspeople. We did the right thing in this instance, I believe.
Okay, you guys agree about the deer.
We agree about the deal.
All right. I wanted to ask about Danbury Airport a little bit, and also the FAA airspace redesign. On the Danbury Airport issue, 5 minutes, okay. On the Danbury Airport issue, you sometimes have tried to deal with the city of Danbury.
I often have.
Yeah, and
It's been difficult.
they don't really have an incentive to
Well, let me
to Richfield
just
neighbors.
cut to it. The FAA Part 150, which is the noise study, the east-west runway, if the wind's in a certain direction, the flights are coming in over the golf course or taking off that way. It's a longer runway. It's the runway of choice by most pilots. And I'm generalizing now. Please, pilots, don't start calling here right away. I'm not a pilot either. However, there is a certain degree of noise, and we found that in 1986 there was a lawsuit that was settled. There was a stipulated agreement, and none of the stipulations, none of the
Okay, we got 2 minutes.
issues were adhered to, signage, etc. So my concern today is the VLGs, the very light jets. Pogo.com and one other company has announced service out of Danbury Airport.
Okay.
These are the Pipers and the Cessnas with 2 jet engines. They're going to be coming in. The FAA is promoting them. They hope that it alleviates traffic out of the metropolitan airports, LaGuardia, Kennedy, Newark, Stewart, and start opening up traffic out of Danbury.
let's start
I
with
think
the
we
word.
need to have a voice in that traffic.
Real quick, my in-laws actually live in Danbury, right on the border. They change the path, it goes right over their deck. My father-in-law complains all the time about the noise level.
Okay.
I tell him, you live close to an airport. You're going to get some noise.
That's right.
But the concern of changing the noise level and the concern of changing the paths, we have to see what the FAA is doing. And
Well, that's
look, and
the redesign.
I'd have,
Let me,
right, to redesign.
That's
I'd have to
redesign.
study that more.
And I could go on about that. I
Okay.
attended a meeting in New Canaan.
We're at the end of our hour. I want to thank everybody for watching, and thank Rudy and
Thanks,
Scott
Mac.
for
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you, Rudy.
coming on. And
Thank you, Comcast.
Yeah, thank you, Comcast. Thank you, people, for calling in.
the end of the show.
It's your town.